panelists who are here tonight with us for being here and sharing your experience and expertise. And thank you to the UPMC Neighborhood Center for hosting us. When we started Just Ideas, we wanted to create a space where decision makers, partners, and community members could come together to talk about one issue and come out of the event with something to do about it. Tonight, that issue is ending SNAP theft. We've been hearing about and working on this issue for a few years now, and I don't want us to be talking about it in a few more years, because this is a crisis. When we hear the phrase waste, fraud, and abuse, too often the focus is placed on people, on whether they deserve help or whether they're doing something wrong. But tonight we're here to flip that narrative. The fraud we're seeing in SNAP right now is real, but it's not coming from participants, it's happening to them. According to Propel, across the country, nearly 1 in 5 households reported having their benefits stolen in the last year. That's millions of families. And more than $600 million was stolen from EBT accounts in 2025 alone. But what really matters most is what that means for people. Because when benefits are stolen, they no longer get reimbursed. Families are skipping meals, they're taking on additional debt, and they're turning to food banks just to make it to the end of the month. That is what the real waste and abuse looks like. And too often, when families reach out for help, they're met with a system that is unresponsive at the exact moment they need it the most. So the question isn't whether fraud exists, it does. The question is, why aren't we doing more to stop it and to protect the people it's happening to? Tonight, we're here to talk about solutions. We know that better security, like chip cards and real-time monitoring, can dramatically reduce theft. And we know people are asking for it. So the call to action is simple. If we're serious about addressing waste, fraud, and abuse, let's focus on the fraud that's actually happening at scale. Let's fix the systems that are failing us. And let's make sure that when people need help putting food on the table, the safety net is there to catch them. There's no better person to lead us through this discussion than Ann Sanders. Maybe she was going to look at me like that. In her role as our Director of Benefits Policy and Programs, she's connected to both what's happening and what needs to change. I'll hand it off to you, Ann.
Thanks everyone for being here. So I'm going to start off just with some very short introductions of who's on our panel. And then I'll go into our first question. Feel free to take that time to introduce yourself further. So right next to me is Sabrina Carpenter. She's a resident of Mount Washington and a community member and SNAP recipient who's here to share her experience about SNAP theft. And then we have Senator Jay Costa. I think he doesn't need any more introduction than that. Everybody knows who he is. Sarah Reed, who is on our SNAP team at Just Harvest, helping folks submit applications, renewals, and troubleshoot their way through the system to get their benefits. And then we have Justin King from Propel, who works on all the policy and all kinds of other great stuff. So let's hop right into it. So I'm just going to ask each of you what brings you here tonight and what, briefly, is your experience with SNAP theft. And Sabrina, I'm going to let you go first.
I'm here tonight as I am a recipient of SNAP benefits, and I have experienced SNAP theft. Has led me to nowhere essentially. So I wanted to see what the issue was essentially and how we can correct it.
So I learned about SNAP benefit theft over the course of the past couple of years in the legislature. There's been a lot of conversation about that. This past year, when the SNAP benefit issue propped up with respect to work requirements and everything else from the Senate Bill 1 or whatever it was, or House Resolution 1, the big beautiful bill, which I call the big ugly bill, but nevertheless, we learned a lot more about it and learned that there are some solutions that we could utilize that would minimize the impact, certainly on the Commonwealth in terms of lost revenue, but also on SNAP benefit recipients in terms of protecting them and helping protect them going forward, and things that we can be doing as a Commonwealth as it relates to the embedded chip and more conversation about awareness and what to do when you are a beneficiary with the cards. So that's the reason how I got involved.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I have not experienced SNAP skimming personally, but I do encounter folks very regularly over the phone who call crisis that do not know what happened to their benefits. They don't know who could have taken it, and they don't know really what to do. So it is important, I think, I want to be there in the moment for them and give them their space to share their frustrations, because it's a violation. They've had their benefits stolen. And I would like to see us find some other ways for people to protect their benefits or block their benefits. And I think these benefits, replacing the benefits is the responsibility of the government from the federal level, especially because, as Heather said, the skimming is a type of fraud. And if we are so concerned about fraud, then let's put an end to it and let's replace these benefits for people who lost them.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks all for having me tonight. I'm Justin King from Propel. Can I just Sabrina, thank you for being here and for being brave enough to share a story that's obviously really painful and terrible. I'm sorry this happened to you. So I work for a company called Propel, and we make an app that's used by millions of SNAP recipients across the country to monitor their balance. And we serve 1 in 3 SNAP recipients in Pennsylvania through this free mobile app. And the core thing that people use the app for is figuring out how much money they have to feed their kids. And so we're the way that people find out they've been robbed. People open the app and they expect to see their deposit, their balance, and the money's gone. And they reach out to us and they're scared and they're confused and they're angry and they're hurt and they don't know what to do. And so we have experienced that at a mass level for 4 years ongoing. This is truly a national crisis. And as a company and as a person with a conscience, I want to do everything I can, and we're trying to do everything we can to protect people from being victimized in this way. These are vulnerable households that need support, and what we see really consistently is a lot of bad things happen to you after this bad thing happens to you. People take on debt, people get kicked out of their houses, people go hungry, and we've all heard of victimless crimes. This is a crime with many, many, many victims. So that's what brings me here today.
Thank you all. So, as we already mentioned, that the federal government stopped reimbursing when benefits are stolen after December of 2024. So we've been more than a whole year without any stolen benefits being replaced. And Sabrina, do you want to talk a little bit about what happened or your experience and how you found out your benefits were stolen?
Okay, so in October of 2025, I started receiving SNAP benefits due to being off of work, FMLA. Typically, I do not receive it. However, I did qualify at that time. I had no other income. I had my mortgage, I had my car notes, I have 2 kids, so I definitely did welcome the assistance. With the application you have to use, you have to make sure your phone is charged, you always have it, you're able to lock and unlock. They also have the ability to call and request, but again, you will need a phone for that. One day, I'm assuming I went to the store to use my card and I did not lock it. I checked my Propel app, and that's when I saw a very low balance. And I go to look for the transactions, and I don't see any transactions. So I just assume it's a glitch. I'll give them a call in the morning to have them corrected. The next morning came, and that is when I saw all these transactions from Walmart. I do shop at Walmart, so I'm just like, this is not my transactions. I called Walmart, I let them know, like, hey, I don't know who had my card information or what have you, but I did not authorize this. I don't know anyone that lives in Colorado. And they're like, we'll do an investigation. I called the county assistant's office, and they advised me to report it to them and to get a new card. And I was like, a new card, I hear on their system, they're telling me to call the police and file a report. So I do that. I contact the police in the area that the theft happened. They tell me that, no, you have to file it with your local authorities where you live. I call them, and they notify me that they're no longer accepting any theft complaints or reports. So it just felt like a circle, I was advised to get the new card. I never got the new card just because I didn't feel like it would do anything. You know, there's still a possibility that someone can get my information and use it again. So I opted to just change my PIN and continue to use the card. I do have access to credit cards. I have family members and things of that nature. A lot of people that I know are recipients of benefits, so I didn't place the burden on anyone else, but I simply use my credit card to make my purchases, which normally I do in the case that I'm unable to unlock my phone for the application, or I don't have it, and I've come here to shop and I have all these groceries, so I'll take the charge. So that was my experience. I got on a call or phone and called everyone that I could to like voice what's going on and see who's doing what, and you know, and that's when I got in contact with Just Harvest for this, and it's led me here. So that's my experience.
And I guess you can kind of go from there into card security. So Sabrina, you just mentioned the app, and Justin, you were in Propel. And obviously, and Justin, I don't know if you want to clarify this. This is sort of like a technical thing. Like, you don't administer the cards. You want to talk about like what Propel does?
So Propel is an option that people can use to manage and track their EBT benefits. We don't contract directly with the state. The state contracts with a company called Conduit to do that. What we do is provide an option that people can use, and you know, if you sort of like just go to the App Store and you look at the ratings, like it's an option that a lot of people like better. And one of the things that we've done through the app is the state has invested money. All the states, not all of them, most of the states have invested money in putting in card locking tools and tools to block out-of-state transactions, but then they just kind of sit there and no one uses them, right? And so one of the choices we've made is to bring those tools into the app and then to push them really aggressively at people, to send reminders to people before your deposit hits. It says, hey, do you want to turn on out-of-state card locking? Do you want to block your card? And we're able to encourage a lot of people to use those tools. But Sabrina's story is sort of a perfect example of what's wrong with where we are right now, which is, I'm going to say a few things, and I'll probably name like 4 or 5, but like, one, we're trying to solve this problem by making people do extra stuff. And we're putting all the onus and the burden on people who are already onus and burden. And you shouldn't have to do a bunch of extra stuff to secure your card because you're getting SNAP, right? And so all of the solutions that we put in place are non-systemic. They put the burden on the individual to do something. And then the second thing is, the tools that we put in place are really limited. They're really poor. Locking your card does not prevent you from being skimmed. Your information still gets skimmed. Your card is still vulnerable. And then to go to the store and to spend your groceries, you have to unlock your card and open up the opportunity for someone else to steal it. And then there's this expectation that every person who gets SNAP is going to always perfectly remember to lock and unlock their card for only 10 seconds. It's insane. And so we've worked really hard to try and make it easier for people to use those tools with the full recognition that what's needed is systemic protections so that people don't have to be perfect in order to not be victimized. Sorry, I went on a rant.
All ranting is welcome.
Watch out, audience.
Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about the things that you've heard from members of our community when they call us and they talk about the field?
So, as I had said before, I have spoken to a lot of people over the phone that call in a daze, really not knowing what happened. And, there are people that think, what did I do wrong? Which is a horrible thing to have to hear when the responsibility is put on the folks that use it, from locking a card to even make sure you check the point of service machine when you go shopping to make sure there's not a skimming device on it, which I think is absurd. But at any rate, a lot of stories such as Sabrina's, and when people are using the app, locking it, unlocking it, with proper people get locked out of the app, and they can't open the app to access their benefits. And then there is a whole other group of folks that do not use the app simply because they don't have the technological comfort to use the app. And we have some of our neighbors, even in this county or others, where we don't have reliable internet service. So without that reliable internet service, you're not able to quickly lock and unlock your card. So when you're speaking to somebody who is older, doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't even really know what an app is, I feel very powerless. There's nothing that I can tell them. I'm very sorry, call your electeds, and hopefully it won't happen again, which, as you said, it keeps happening.
Senator Costa, what has your office been hearing about this issue?
We have received a number of complaints from folks who've expressed exactly what Sabrina talked about, where their benefits had been taken. And asking the question, what did we do wrong? What did I do wrong? And it turns out it's really not much that they did wrong, but rather the way the system is structured. I think as a Commonwealth, we have an obligation to do a couple things. Certainly push our federal legislators to do what they reestablish what was ended in December of 2024. We in Pennsylvania need to take steps to be able to do more along the lines of educating folks. I know the responsibility shouldn't necessarily bear with those individuals, but we have to make sure they understand the significance and seriousness of taking the steps that are recommended along those lines. Certainly the embedded chip, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the things that we can do. I think we need to come to the realization that by doing that, we will be saving a lot more money. Despite what it's going to cost to implement it, what we do end up saving is on the back end, limiting the amount of fraud that's taking place. And by doing that, it's not only eliminating fraud that the Commonwealth has experienced through the federal government, it's benefiting to the people, their lives are not being impacted in a way that we talked about earlier, or you do without benefits for a long period of time, for the rest of that month, for example. And then it just brings into question a whole host of other issues that may develop, as was mentioned earlier. So we hear from it, people, we try to work with them, we refer them to DHS and to do the things they talked about, to do the locking, etc., making sure all those things are being done. But we have more work to be able to do in this space.
All right, so I'm just gonna repeat some nonsense that DHS has said, because about how long it takes to implement chip cards, which is like, we're like, oh, it'll take forever to do it because we have to do everything, all the retailers have to do stuff. And only a couple states so far have implemented chip cards. And Justin, what I wanted to know is, in the states that have implemented chip cards, what are you seeing in terms of trends with that?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say because there's only 2 states, and one, California, it's fully rolled out, and then Alabama is in the middle of their rollout, getting close to completed. And it's a little weird that like Alabama and California are the pair. Yeah, they don't often go together. But what we are seeing very clearly is a really, really substantial reduction in the amount of theft that's happening, particularly in California because they have a full roll. It's early, and so it's hard to sort of say with like total certainty, but I think the numbers we're going to kind of end up talking about when we can really see it is, 70, 75, 80% reduction in the amount of theft that's happening. And that to me sounds very worth it. That is a huge improvement in the material well-being of the people that SNAP is supposed to serve. It's a huge improvement in the value that's delivered to the taxpayer who is investing in these households and their communities and should not be funneling money off to the Romanian mafia, which is where a lot of this money goes. So CHIP is a huge step forward. There are implementation barriers that you need to watch. There are a lot of retailers that don't have chip readers and still require people to skim, which leaves them vulnerable to skimming. So ensuring that there's a way for retailers to comply and make sure that they can deliver chip is really important to cutting that off as much as you can. But in general, chip is working in the places it's been rolled out. It is reducing the amount of theft, and it's not like a strange or weird technology. People know how to use it, it works for them, and it makes a big difference.
There are some others started doing where they have been like using data to try to prevent theft. Like, several people who recently shopped at this store just reported that their benefits were stolen, and the state's been trying to like mass replace cards. And Sabrina and I were just talking about this earlier today because you've also had some experience with this and how that actually worked. Would you mind talking about that?
Okay, so on Wednesday, I went to Sam's Club and I made some purchases. So when I get to the counter, I swipe my card, put in my PIN. I have my phone, so I unlock it and wait for it to approve and wait to lock it back. It just never went through. I didn't know what was wrong. I'm like, this is my only card. I got my benefits stolen in January. I still have this card. I didn't ask for a replacement. This is the only card. What's going on? So I just leave. I leave, but I, purchase the stuff. I leave without getting it through my stamps. And I go home and I have some time to call them. On the back of the card, you can call the number, they'll be available. So I call and I say, hey, I went to use my card, it's not working, what's going on? And that's when I'm told that the county assistance office replaced my card. They sent out a card a day or two ago prior to Wednesday, and it would be in the mail for me in 7 to 10 days. So I, obviously say how much of an inconvenience that was. They obviously don't know whether or not if I have food in my house for my kids, and this is real inconvenience because I didn't ask for it. So that was that. I called the county assistance office the next day, which was Thursday. Yesterday, they advised me that there was a mass reissuance of the cards in Allegheny County. So I did alert some folks like, hey, you may want to try using your card. I don't know if it was just me or if it's everyone. But once I found out, I did let others know. But that's not the way to go, obviously.
Thanks, Sabrina. I think that's like one of those good intentions, but not well executed situations. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
like 2 years ago in Massachusetts, the state did a forced repin for the entire eastern half of the state of Massachusetts. So literally everyone in Boston, everyone east of Springfield, basically. And like, I don't know about you guys, I would rather get a root canal than change my PIN. But they made every SNAP recipient in the state repin. And I think what you can sort of see is it's good intentions, and people are up against the wall. They're trying as hard as they can, but we're inventing increasingly Byzantine responses to a problem that's actually pretty straightforward to solve.
Right. Senator Costa, what do you think is the best way the state can address this issue, and what barriers are there to making investments to make transitions?
I think what opportunities we have in front of us, certainly go back to the embedded chip, I think is the way that we should be looking at. The barrier is the belief that it's not worth making that investment, or that the manner in which we have to go about doing it and time and costs associated with it present the barrier. We have to do a better job of convincing folks that it's imperative that we do this, certainly because of the revenue side of savings and the like, and avoiding fraud, but the impact it has on people's lives, like Sabrina. You just see her in you said Sam's Club, right? In Sam's Club, in line with a whole basket full of things that she needs for her family, and not be able to purchase them, have to step out or use her credit card to do that. That's not what was intended. So the barriers are making sure that we educate lawmakers and the administration, quite frankly, that there's a tremendous benefit of doing this and how essential it is. And even though only 2 states are in the process, one has done it, one is in the process, based upon what we already know from California, you're telling me, even 75% reduction in theft is huge. And at the end of the day, it will pay for itself going forward, and going forward in future years as well.
Right. So make sure I asked all the other questions before I get into the fun advocacy question. All right. I'm going to send this one right back to you, Senator Costa. How can we urge the state, your members, your fellow colleagues, to take action on this issue?
I don't necessarily think it's the membership, or at least many of the members that have a concern about doing something like this. I think it's the administration. Got tremendous respect for Secretary Arkush and her team, but I'm just concerned that they're looking at it from a financial point of view. And given the significant resource struggle we're going to be facing going forward, that's a barrier right now. But I think the membership are the ones that need to hear, need to put pressure on the administration as well. I think you'll find a sympathetic ear with a lot of my colleagues. I know the House has already moved out a bill in the House out of committee. We just got to convince folks it's the right thing to do at this moment in time, regardless of what our financial situation is. Again, saving 75% of the resources that are being stolen, significant savings. So work that needs to be done is at least reach out to legislators, folks like Sabrina, who take the time to go visit with them, and those organizations like Just Harvest, talking to legislators and convincing them to speak to the leadership, and particularly the administration, to be able to advance and move forward what needs to be done. Because to me, it's something we should be doing. And again, certainly it's dollars and cents, I get that at the end of the day. But it's also the impact of people's lives that it's having on their families, and their inability to be able to get the resources to be able to utilize and purchase the food they need for their families.
Justin, do you want to talk about what's going on at the federal level?
So one thing I should mention, and I couldn't agree with you more. So this will pay for it. This will pay for itself. Our estimate of Propel is this is a $600 million a year drain of resources nationwide, right? So last year, $600 million got stolen off the tables of hungry families all across the country. Tens of millions last year alone here in Pennsylvania. It is an epidemic, and we're 4 years into it. So the damage that's been done is incredibly vast. At the federal level, there's a bill that, and this is, I'm going to say some strange stuff, a bipartisan bill in Congress that actually both of Pennsylvania's senators are on. Senator Fetterman and Senator McCormick are both on. Senator Fetterman in particular has been a real leader on this over the course of a couple of years, that would mandate that states transition to chip cards and would provide federal funds to do that. It would also require that the Department of Agriculture, who oversees the SNAP program, revisit the security standards of EBT cards on an ongoing basis and put new cards out there, so we don't end up in a situation where everyone is using a completely obsolete financial product that the entire rest of the universe has moved away from because it is so vulnerable. There are hotel room key cards that are more secure than the EBT card. So that legislation is very encouraging. There's Republicans and Democrats on that in both the House and the Senate. So there's an advocacy opportunity for folks at the federal level as well. I think the budget challenges you all are facing specific to the SNAP program are going to get worse because of the outflow of HR 1, or the amount of money that the state gets reimbursed for administering the SNAP program is about to get cut in half. So the states are really feeling the pinch, not just here in Pennsylvania, but across the country. And so some federal action would go a long way. And that bill that Senator Fetterman has helped to author and Senator McCormick is supporting, it's called the Enhanced Cybersecurity for SNAP Act, would make a big difference.
I just want to add, just to mention, under HR 1, the additional administrative costs that we now have to bear, DHS has to bear to administer this program, is significant. We haven't talked about the error rate, which is another major issue we have to talk about. I think if we are, above 6% and we lose in the error rate, first of all, when this came down, I think our error rate was around 10 or so, 10 or 11%. So the DHS is working hard to bring it down in compliance under the 6%. But if we end up between 6 and 8%, let's say, we're going to lose a significant amount of federal benefits for recipients. So we got to be mindful that this amount of money that's stolen, the theft of this money, plays into that, if I'm not mistaken. So it's part of the, if I'm not mistaken, as you add up the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse, this impacts it significantly. So it puts us at greater risk, if I'm not mistaken.
And any comments as a community member who's advocating for change? Or Sarah?
As I stated, I am here on behalf of Just Harvest. I would like to see chips implemented. However, I do believe that there are other things in which we can look at, such as just additional security methods, like when you have a credit card, if you go out of town and you try to use your card, at times the card will not allow you to use it. It will flag an alert. You'll have to contact your provider or say, this is me, allow this transaction to happen. That could be one of the less financially strained things that we can do. Or an extra security on the Propel app, stating essentially, like, I'm given authorization to this purchase. Another form, something like a passcode or something. Chips are good and it may be expensive and everything, but we can look at other areas that we can possibly make a change and stop the theft from occurring.
Can I pick up on that really quickly, Sabrina? I think you're right on. I think most of us have probably had this experience at some point in our lives where, like, your phone buzzes and you pick it up and it's like, hey, it's Capital One. Are you trying to buy a couch in Tacoma? Like no, I'm not. Thank you. When we serve, almost 6 million people every month, and we see their data on their transactions, and when you aggregate that data and you look for suspicious patterns, it's not hard to see what's happening. You see things like a bodega in New York City that processes 600 consecutive transactions from Georgia. All of them are over $250, and all of them happen between 1 and 4 a.m. And it's just like, couldn't we stop that after the 50th one, right? Like, we have the ability, if we're able to, if we have the will, to put real-time transaction blocking in place where EBTs were obviously suspicious and potentially fraudulent transactions. We've worked with a big national nonprofit called the Aspen Institute, and we've raised $3 million philanthropic dollars to put on the table for states to put in place a program of real-time transaction blocking based off of data that we have and others in the space have about which transactions are most likely to be fraudulent. And so we are working currently to put in place a set of pilot programs across the country that would do just that. Sabrina's right, there's more that we can do, we just need to find the will to do it. The scale of theft is so large, if we could cut another 25% off of it through real-time transaction blocking and other methods, we would be doing a tremendous good for the people of this country.
All right. Now we can open it up for Q&A. Do you want to come up or do you want to stand? Or?
That'll reach.
You should run faster when you do that.
I'm like, I don't know.
Recognizing that the focus of the discussion appropriately is increasing the efficiency and trying to prevent fraud with this available SNAP funds, and that's very obviously important and has important fiscal implications. But if I could, I'd like to go a little broader, and given the what I'm going to call the toxic political climate at the federal level, certainly in terms of serious discussions about policy issues, we have to then look at the state. And my question is, what is the likelihood that within the next 3 years, there would be initiatives at the state level that would address, beyond SNAP, would address other issues promoting, trying to attack food insecurity and promoting effective distribution of food as needed? That's my question, I guess, for Senator Costa. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think there are things that we can be doing and should be doing as we go forward. I think of one of the things the governor's proposed is $100 million, what he calls a federal response bucket of money, to be able specifically to address what is happening. For example, when we had this SNAP issue, whenever we had the budget delay, at the federal level, there was money he was able to utilize to be able to send money to the food banks to offset the folks who were dealing with not receiving their SNAP benefits. So those are the type of things I think that we can do. I think there's a greater recognition that there are things we need to do along those lines. We've continuously made investments in food insecurity programs around the Commonwealth, and we've promoted them. There's more that we can do, but it's always been limited with the resources that we've had. I will tell you that I think, as I anticipate at the federal level, a change in leadership and majority, at least in the House, if not in both the House and Senate, I think there's a similar opportunity in Pennsylvania to be able to do the same thing between we already have a House and then looking to flip the Senate. If that occurs, I think we'll have a trifecta that will allow us to be able to do all the things that you talked about, the investments that we need to make to address food insecurity and many other things as it relates to healthcare, for example. You know, come January, this whole Medicaid situation is coming down the road here, and folks are going to be losing benefits. We already saw 100,000 people who are no longer part of receiving benefits for a penny. These are all the type of things that I think in a few years you'll see us try to address after the upcoming election.
Thank you.
So I think there's a good chance those things could happen.
Fine. I need a clarification, and depending on how that is, I might have a question then. But I'm wondering, do we see this with WIC? Like, is there theft with WIC? There isn't. And they switched from the checks to the cards a while ago. So then my question is, what are they doing that maybe SNAP is not? Or is it just, granted, there are a lot less people that access WIC, but still.
WIC isn't money, right? Like mostly, right? There's a tiny portion of WIC that is money, but for the most part, WIC isn't money. So WIC is a goods exchange program that makes it less appealing. Once you steal the money from SNAP, you have to either collect it directly from the feds, which some places do by pretending to be an authorized SNAP retailer and they intercept the payments, or you have to buy the goods and then liquidate them, right? I've learned like way too much about the way that criminals operate. It's kind of messing with me, but so SNAP makes sense in a way that to steal in a way that WIC doesn't. More and more, we're seeing less of that goods liquidation and more of that direct payment interception because that's easier and it's just money. The other program though that is really at issue here and why I say EBT theft instead of SNAP theft is TANF, right? Is TANF, or cash welfare, because most states deliver TANF, cash welfare, on EBT cards. You can move your TANF money off in a lot of cases to a bank card, so it has Reg E protections that allow you to be reimbursed and chips and all that sort of stuff. But I think California has been a hotbed of EBT theft for a long time, and I think California really went first with chips because they have a robust TANF program, unlike most other states. It's quite generous. They had a state law where they would reimburse people for theft. And so the TANF money, which is very attractive for thieves to steal because it's just money, you don't have to liquidate it, became a real target. And so then the state was having to reimburse people, and so the state had a financial incentive to be the first mover on chip cards. So WIC is harder, TANF is really at issue here in addition to SNAP. And I'm probably talking too much.
No,
So I'm gonna
that's
stop.
really clarified, thank you.
Justin, how many states do reimburse EBT theft?
2 states reimburse. One of them's not a state, one of them is DC. So California and DC have reimbursement plans at the state level. Maryland also has a limited reimbursement plan. So it's a very, very small number. Losing the federal reimbursement was a bad thing. Reimbursement helped a lot of households. Our survey data though, which we've done for several years on this topic now, reimbursement had a lot of holes, a lot of flaws. Only about 60% of victimized households applied for reimbursement. So a lot of people didn't know or didn't bother. In some states it was really hard to get through the hoops. I'm not going to badmouth reimbursement. I am going to say getting reimbursed is not as good as not being robbed in the first place. And so reimbursement helped to stabilize a lot of households. It could take a long time to deliver the reimbursement. And people have to know about it, and they have to do it, and they have to feel like it's worth it. So reimbursement is good, but not getting robbed is better.
Yeah, well,
Might be a little bit long-winded. However, the question wound up being for Justin.
Well, I can match you on long-winded.
I've been listening to you. But I just wanted to say to Sabrina, I too am a victim of SNAP, and mine's happened in September of 2025. So I'm going to speak for the seniors. I'm 66 years old, retiree, and was never on SNAP. I worked since I was 14 years old. Okay, and I am retired from technology. So everything that I do is on apps, it's everything. And I filter, I do everything that I can do. And so I was really like kind of offended when it happened to me. You know, I really was, because I knew I did everything. And my card was locked. And they still got it in Texas. It still was retrieved in Texas. And I was so offended. I mean, I grew up, my mom, you have to write. You know, one person can make a difference. And she always taught, her and my dad taught us that. One person, 1 to 12 kids, always taught us that. And so I wrote to you, Senator. I wrote to federal. I wrote to the Texas Attorney General's office. I mean, I just did everything similar to some of the things that you did as well. And ended up talking with Dan, the Just Harvest, and we spoke for a while. And it just was, I just couldn't believe it. And so, yes, there are a lot of folks, seniors, who don't want to be bothered with technology. They just don't. And they just expect to have, get what they're getting. And to tell them, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And, so for me, it was easy. And as far as you not getting a new card, they automatically said to me I had to receive a new card and change my PIN number. So, but for me, what I always did before I would leave my home to go to the store, I didn't want to be embarrassed, so I checked my balance, period. And it was like 4 in the morning, okay, got the email alert that your money was there, and later, 10 o'clock in the morning, I go to check, it was gone. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And yes, it is a big hardship, even though I'm a senior and my children are grown, that was a big hardship for me, because you leave the work world and I took my Social Security at 62, so that kind of reduces a lot. Yeah. It reduces a lot, and so that's why I qualified for SNAP. So that was a big hardship, and thankfully I had wonderful kids who said, Mom, we'll help you, but it still was a hardship as well. So I guess my question now to you is, when you look at when you lock it, you have to select either locked or you have to select out of state locked. And then it tells you in the caption, it's not covered if they do an online transaction. And that's actually how they got me. It was online, it was a delivery. I called the store. And I asked them, and they said, oh yeah, we have a lot of that, blah, 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 And it was an online food delivery, which they got it. So I read all the information that comes through. That's great, when you send the information, I read all of that. But is that something that, even though the chip may not be happening soon, is that something that's going to be ongoing as far as that button or choice to lock it, period?
I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I think it's an example of sort of like, we ask you to do a lot.
Yeah.
And even when you do all the right stuff, it's still not enough, and that's not right. So the way that Pennsylvania contracts with a company called Conduent to manage their EBT system. Conduent's EBT products are called Connect EBT, so it's the Connect EBT system. There's one other big vendor that other states use that's called FIS. FIS's product is called EBT Edge. FIS and Conduent implemented similar technologies differently. The way that Pennsylvania's Conduent implementation and all of the Conduent states, the way they're blocking is set up is so you have the option, just like you said, to lock my card everywhere, air quotes, lock my card out of state, but their system does not account or allow for blocking online transactions through any mechanism. And unfortunately, all we can do is offer people the tools that the state and their vendor partner stand up. Right? We can't improve upon them. And we've heard from lots of people in Conduent states and in Pennsylvania in particular who have been victimized in that way. And unless the state makes Conduit, change that product, that's how it's going to be. The FIS system has a more robust locking that actually includes online transactions. And we're starting to see states do some kind of crazy things where it's like your card is locked in every other. Alabama has a thing where your card is locked in every state that isn't Alabama, and you can unlock it, and that includes online transactions. Wisconsin doesn't have, just put in a thing where it's blocked in every non-neighboring state, and you can undo that, and then it resets at the first of every month. And so, like I said, there's increasingly complex things.
So is that being addressed to Conduit?
I mean, they know, and they know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, did you mention about funneling or whatever through the meeting?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Senator, some of these local retailers, come on now, they're benefiting from swiping cards and stuff. I have friends who I know that because of the food deserts, like in the Hill District, okay, where they have to go to these retailers and they're, swiping more, or they're taking more, or whatever, or they could be skimming as well, That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of learning about the situation as everyone's talking through their examples. So I'm familiar with unemployment compensation, how that works, and I like the WIC example, but I was kind of thinking through what is preventing the SNAP benefits from being administered through a direct deposit format that's similar to unemployment compensation. Is that something that was ever considered? Because it seems like the security issue with the point of sale is kind of creating the situation where there's fraud with some use. But as somebody's on unemployment multiple times, I've thought through it that way.
Yeah, so unemployment, you put it into your bank account. Your bank account gives you a chip card, all that sort of stuff. Congress created EBT, and they created EBT to replace paper coupons, right? We call them food stamps because people, raise your hand if you remember, food stamps, actual stamps, right? And EBT was a modernizing solution for this that was going to be more secure and all that. When they created the law that advanced EBT in conjunction with the welfare reform of the 90s, and I'm so dating myself here, but there's a rule that makes your bank pay you back if you're stolen from, and that's why the banks are incentivized to put the chips in and all the other projections. That rule is called Reg E. When they passed the law to create the EBT system, they said EBT shall not be subject to Reg E. So the financial incentives to protect the card over time are not there. There's no incentive, there's no requirement to pay people back. And EBT has developed as a separate financial system from the mainstream financial system, which is why if you go to a Walmart or a Target, their software will allow them to sort of accept the card at the same terminal as everyone else. But if you go to a general store out in the sticks, they're gonna have a separate terminal just for EBT. And so, look, again, I'm being long-winded, but you have to uproot that whole system in order to do that, and that's a system that's grown over 30 years to be that way. I think you have a really good idea for sort of we have to close this gap between what it's like to use a debit card and what it's like to use a SNAP card. There's big structural ways to do that, but you need sort of big legislation, you need Congress, and you need time to do all that sort of stuff. But right now it's impossible. Somebody cannot take their SNAP funds off of their EBT card and put it on a secure bank card. They're not allowed to do that.
Did you read it?
I just want to say thank you all for your insights on this topic. It's very interesting. I was just wondering, like, what is the big purchase items that show up that look like frauds for the reselling? Because you mentioned there's several, but I know there's like regulations on what someone can buy on the SNAP program.
It's really interesting. We don't see what people buy. We just see where they buy it and how, like, we see the amount of the total transaction, the date, and the retailer location. So anecdotally and from law enforcement reports where like they've arrested people and charged them, you'll see like, remember when the infant formula crisis was really hot? They loved to buy infant formula because they could move it at a profit, right? You're basically buying it for free and then selling it for more than you would have bought it for. It's stuff that can be resold. And so sometimes it'll be like, you buy sodas and then you resell them to like a shady retailer that's willing to buy stuff through the back door, right? So it's fungible goods, but we know that from law enforcement reports, not because we can see sort of like the things people buy, we can't.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the comment about like why isn't SNAP like unemployment benefits and going to the bank so you could use, you know, your, just it would be in your bank account. That was interesting what you said, but I think there's a whole other piece, is the federal government does not trust low-income people to use money in a responsible way. So by keeping it as SNAP, it forces you to buy food, and like Ben said, like, you know, and there's certain things you can't buy, right? You can't buy the rotisserie chicken, and now in certain states you can't buy soda, you can't buy whatever. So it's just, there's no way without massive change of heart that the money would go to somebody's bank account, because God forbid somebody would use it in a way somebody thinks is not the right way.
Just a quick question on sort of the people behind this stuff. You mentioned Romanian mafia, you mentioned a little bit more about the operations just now. I've heard bits and pieces, but I mean, who are these people, and yeah, how is this, I mean, it's amazing to me that this is such a big and organized operation.
There's criminals of all different stripes who are involved in this. It's big business. And I think you said earlier that like this kind of started during the pandemic. And I actually think that was like a triggering moment, because one of our pandemic responses on a policy level was to throw a lot more money into SNAP and everybody got the max allotment, right? Everybody got the total amount that you could get based on the size of your household. And I think that drew the attention of a lot of criminals who saw that as an opportunity to get easy money. So strangely, the federal law enforcement agency that is most directly in charge of investigating these crimes is the Secret Service. They partner with the FBI and others, and if you read press releases and case reports from the Secret Service and from the FBI, you will often see them prosecuting and arresting folks with international roots, in particular, like, yes, like literally the Romanian mafia. There was a joint operation with the FBI and Romanian federal authorities where they arrested, like, they had hundreds of people who were in charge of tens of millions of dollars. So that is like a real thing, and I know I like exaggerate a lot, but that's like a real thing. But it's also, it's just the skimmers, the people that do the skimming and the people that do the stealing of the money are often two separate groups. And so information gets skimmed, thousands of people's information is stolen through a skimmer or a set of skimmers, and then that is sold through the darker parts of the internet to people who will liquidate it. And so there's like a lot of people that are involved in it. Many of them are from other sort of transnational mafia groups, but there are domestic actors who are involved in it as well. And like I said, I've had to learn a little too much about the way the criminal mind operates in this space, and I'd like us to stop letting this happen.
Sure, but one follow-up question. So there's also online ways sort of hackers involved in this too. Will that continue to be a problem when we switch to the chip? And people still are purchasing things online. Obviously, it's more secure, but they still can't be reimbursed like they would at a bank. So
Yeah.
what's the situation there?
Yeah, two thoughts immediately. One is, I think this is probably going to get worse before it gets better because of AI, right? That like whatever labor cost of like doing the stuff is being compressed by people who are training AI to do it for them at scale. And this is something the state probably has to start getting ready for in all of its money paying out programs. So that's a very dark and bleak, but I think true thing. And then chips are very secure. Chips can be compromised. There's a device called a shimmer, which is like less common than a skimmer, but it can compromise a chip. What's going to happen is that technology will become obsolete, and it will need to be replaced by more secure technology. And we will see the banks and the credit cards and the people who have skin in the game invent the next better thing and move to it. And the challenge that Senator Costa has and the challenge that federal policymakers have is making sure that 8 years from now, 12 years from now, 17, however long down the road it is, that we don't just let EBT sit with an obsolete, easy target so that people who need help are being victimized for seeking help. So we need a recurring mechanism to come back and revisit this, and we don't have that right now.
More questions back here.
Hello, I was just wondering, like statistically speaking, like if there was a state that kind of experienced a higher rate of skimming or where the money is being, I guess, taken from. So I don't know if there's a specific state or the rates, how they might potentially vary. And I had also an additional question just regarding outreach. I primarily specialize in outreach at the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, and I've experienced a few neighbors who have come up to me with skimming issue, and it's kind of, I feel like I experience a sense of like disappointment whenever I'm not able to help somebody with either a resource or a service. So I don't know if maybe there's a way that we can kind of cater our outreach to, I guess, alleviate some of the pain that our neighbors might be experiencing. So is there any suggestions of like surrounding that, I guess?
Yeah. I'll talk about the first part. We just published a study of we surveyed 8,000 SNAP recipients nationwide about their experience with EBT death, and like truly, this is a national problem. And what we see sort of like consistently is that the criminals move, right? They are not locals. They are not bound to one spot, and so you'll go through like a 2 or 3 month period where like South Carolina, Colorado, and New Mexico are the hotspots, and then Indiana and Massachusetts and Georgia will take over. So we see the criminals moving around, both in terms of the skimming activity, and that's one of the reasons why the sort of out-of-state blocking responses are really limited, because there's nothing that stops these people from moving. So, so yes, there are hotspots. They change over time. Like you, I don't have anything great to tell someone who's been a victim of theft. If I have a conversation with somebody, I try to say, I'm sorry, and it's not your fault. And I think for me, that feels better than saying, oh, well, you should lock your car. You know what I mean? Like, of course it's out of line. So I'd love to hear from what other, Sarah, what you tell people and what feels good for them. And Sabrina, I'd love to know what you would like to hear or like to have heard that you didn't hear.
I think first and foremost, you have to validate how someone feels, that they've been victimized, if they've had something stolen from them that they relied and expected to receive. And again, for me, I want to give somebody a space, even if they want to rant, if they want to cry, some other options. I'm, particularly for older adults that are not internet savvy, that don't know how to use an app. Maybe there should be an 800 number they can call to lock their car. There's also really limited language support out there. So I have repinned cards for people that do not speak English, and that is at least something that I can offer, is like, let me at least help you reset your PIN. But again, these are very limited. This does not do anything to ameliorate, their loss, and that they have to go without. So I think just keeping the space open and telling people that they have a voice and they need to, share how they feel.
All right, so while I had my credit cards to be able to use, as I stated, I was not working. I was not receiving any income. I did not have the ability to purchase that stuff. I did, but that put me in a worse situation. As far as food banks, I never personally thought about a food bank. I have a 8-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. They're very picky eaters. They have allergies. We're learning new stuff every single day. So it's not I'm being picky because I don't want to go to a food bank. It just wasn't something realistically I could afford to do. As far as what I want to hear, the reason I'm here is because I'm upset that it happened to me. Back in, I'm guessing 2024, when around the time that they stopped reimbursing the benefits, someone came to me in the store like, hey, make sure you're locking your card because they're stealing people's stamps. And I'm thinking like, I didn't think it was real. I thought it was someone who probably gave their card to someone and misused it or something of the sort. However, around that time, I did start to lock my card. I don't recall if my card was unlocked or locked. I know when I checked it and the balance was low, I saw that it was unlocked. I then locked it because I didn't see any transactions. But I'm here because I'm upset that this happened. I've never given anyone my card. I've never given anyone my PIN. I've never given anyone authorization to use it. The system and the way in which we are just operating or handling the situation is just, this isn't it. And while I may not be eligible for food stamps next month, I still have an 84-year-old grandmother. I know a lot of people who are relying on these benefits. If you are going to give it to them, you should protect them and their benefits. If they did not voluntarily provide someone with their information, then it definitely shouldn't be something that they're being penalized for. So I just would like to see change, however that is. Again, not necessarily for me, as I won't be a continued recipient, but for those who are not tech savvy, do not know about applications. A lot of people want to make it a little bit strict for, you have to show your ID. For my 85-year-old grandmother, she doesn't walk inside a supermarket. She has to provide her card to one of her grandchildren to go shopping and everything. So, I mean, do you want a letter? Do you want us to FaceTime her? Like, what is it that you want to do? So she's not tech savvy. And I looked on Facebook and I'm doing all this research, like, how did this happen to me? Like, out of all people. And I see there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world who have been experiencing this, and also the elderly. Like, one person will get their benefits stolen 1 month and turn around and get it stolen again, or have their card shipped out to them, and when it comes to them, there's no benefits on it. So I'm sitting here thinking like, wonder when I get my card if I'm even going to have any funds on it. There was something spoken about whether or not online transactions, I wouldn't even be protected because my transactions were done online, and I'm not here because it was a couple of dollars. I don't always use my card, so I use my credit card. So I was banking on that money to be able to accommodate me. So not only did I pay with the credit card, I now have to pay back in increments because clearly I can't pay it all. But now there is no more stamps for me to even utilize. So if you said something to the sort of, you're not going to be protected from online purchases, it's like, we're doing it.
Sabrina, you said something about the food bank, and I mean, that's what we end up saying is like, oh, you need food right now, let's find a food pantry in your area. But you're right, it doesn't fill the gap. Like, our Princess Food Bank, you all do amazing work, but a lot of people can't get to the market, which is where you can choose what you eat, people have dietary restrictions, the hours for our pantries don't meet with everybody's schedule, people don't have access to transportation. There's all kinds of issues with that, and it's, you know, it's not a solution that can fill a whole month's worth of SNAP benefits. So I think, you know, I just wanted to restate like how important it is that, you know, some people just don't know like food bank and the solution. And that's not, it's important that it's there for emergencies, but and that is an emergency, but yeah. It doesn't always work for everybody.
Well, let's give a round of applause for our panelists. Hi everyone, I'm Dan McCarthy, grassroots organizer at Just Harvest. I want to say a big thank you for joining us today and talking about this crucial issue. The number of times I've talked to people about this for the first time, never heard about it, and they're just dumbfounded by the scale of the problem. It feels crazy to me and to them that a problem this large is not being talked about enough. So thank you all for joining us today and addressing this critical issue. We've talked a lot about ways to address this. For me, it feels like such a simple fix that if we invest in a program like this, the dividends are clear, benefiting families and our economy and our food system. The way that we can do that right now is by bothering the lovely legislators of our state. So I would like to ask everybody to take a moment, if you can, pull out your cell phone and use the QR code up here. We have a quick call to action to reach out to the leadership of the PA State Legislature. So Senator Costa doing a couple emails to us. But really urging the leadership of our state to invest in this issue, to understand that it's critical, to hear from community members who care about their neighbors and want to address this problem. There's going to be like a preset letter, but please add your own comments, add your own words, and together we can try and push the needle and make a difference in our state and hopefully across the country. So, thank you everyone.